What's up, everybody? My name's Big Cam and welcome back to another 007 James Bond movie review. And we're coming off of 1983's Octopussy for Roger Moore, but then there was the one and final Sean Connery James Bond film that we just recently did as well, also came out in 83, and I believe that was Never Say Never Again. And as far as last outings for Bond, I think Roger Moore's was even better than Sean Connery's. And I thought this Bond film was actually really good, you know, and as far as like a final outing for the character, could it have been better? Maybe. But I think as far as Bond movies go, you know, Denis Villeneuve making the newer one should take some notes from this one, because it does what all the other Bond films do incredibly well, right? And it's entertaining, right? Takes you on an adventure, takes you different places. Like we're in the Eiffel Tower fighting this beautiful, gorgeous Grace Jones, this black woman over here, in this different alternate poster, and it says, "Has James Bond finally met his match?" And this movie, oh, Grace Jones playing Mayday, and Mayday has like a full arc. She's like the villain of the movie. She's trying to kill him. She's doing all of Max Zorin's dirty work. Max Zorin is played by Christopher Walken, freaking a younger Christopher Walken. I absolutely love that. You know, and it was funny seeing him as, you know, Max Zorin in this, and then, you know, this is a few years, 7 years before 1992's The Batman Returns, where he plays Max Schreck. So, a little, for some reason in my mind, that guy from 1985's A View to Kill, Christopher Walken, he dies by falling off of the, you know, San Francisco bridge into the water below, which is certainly a fall that could kill you. But my little headcanon is that this Max is the same Max from the Batman Returns, and that, you know, they're very, very similar villain characters and psychopath characters for Christopher Walken, and I absolutely love that. But Christopher Walken's, you know, up there in his 80s, still doing it. Love to see that, you know? And Grace Jones is up in her 80s, late 70s, I believe, as well, but she is drop dead gorgeous. She was in some other things like Conan the Barbarian with Arnie, and she was also in Boomerang with Eddie Murphy, and says she's been in some other things as well. 38 films, but I think where most people would know her is as a model, and like even just this poster here, this little skimpy outfit with the long legs, oh my goodness, so gorgeous. I mean, some of the shots of Grace Jones in this movie had me melting from the inside out, legitimately. I was like, holy Christ, who is that woman? I'm obsessed, you know, like, whew, so gorgeous. But also, like, compelling, where she wasn't just eye candy, right? Like, she was an assassin, you know, killing people with a fly fishing thing, and Bond's chasing after her, and she's skydiving, and, you know, she's doing all these crazy shit. She's fighting people, but she's also incredibly attractive. So she has, you know, a moment where Bond's, you know, flirting with her and being like, "I'm waiting for you." And she, you know, has this moment where she could have gotten naked, and probably in other Bond films they would have showed all of it, but they just showed it from such an angle that she didn't show everything, but only Bond got to see it, type of thing. Slips into the covers and has like a little romantic moment with him. But, you know, so that's why at the end of the movie, she kind of turns on Max Zorin, because she realizes that he only cares about himself and was going to turn on her anyways. So she helps Bond. Instead of defusing the bomb, they bring it up out of the pit, and she rides it off into like the sunset, if you would, and explodes, and she dies, you know, as being a hero instead of being the villain of the movie. But then he also had another sexy Bond girl in here named Tanya Roberts, who played STACEY Sutton, who was a, you know, geologist, and she wasn't just eye candy. She was a woman that like knew about earthquakes, and she was a seismologist or whatever, and you know, knew about the fault lines in San Francisco, and like she was a, you know, a part of the story and the dialogue, and then also had this great, you know, Bond saves the girl moment on top of the San Francisco bridge, which looked awesome. You know, like just some of those set locations we had like the Eiffel Tower, Paris, and then San Francisco and the San Francisco bridge. I was like, dude, some iconic locations. And then friggin' Mayday and Max Zorin, friggin' Grace Jones and Christopher Walken are flying in a blimp, you know, like, and he has to take down a blimp at the end of the day to save the day type of thing. I was like, oh wow, they're just showing off the time. Like, blimps must have been kind of new in '85. They were like, oh, we can use a blimp. Oh, that's kind of new. We'll take down a blimp. Like, okay. Like, and he ties it to the San Francisco bridge so they can't fly away. I was like, this is, you know, fairly interesting, you know. And some other people in here, Patrick Macney, I was like, I recognized him in this film, and he was just playing like one of these agent guys. But I watched a movie last Halloween, 1981's The Howling, and he played Dr. George Wagner in that movie. And I was like, oh, interesting. I thought I recognized that face, and apparently I did. But there was also Fiona Fullerton, played Paula Ivanova, which was this other sexy spy that like was helping James Bond out. I was just like, oh my god, Roger Moore has some of the best Bond women, and he hooks up with all of them, you know. Like, you know, I was like, oh, it must have just been in the thing in the 80s where it was just like, well, he's not married, they're not dating, why not hook up with anybody you see, you know? Like, just a different vibe. We're like, today, nobody's hooking up, people aren't even talking. If you go to a club right now, everybody's like this. You know, like, that's not my vibe at all, so I would rather not go, you know? Like, I'd rather stay home and watch movies than go to a club and deal with bullshit-ass people in today, you know? Like, I should have been alive during the 80s and 90s and, you know, been the age I am now in the 80s and 90s rather than in the 2020s, you know? Like, I was born too late. I'm an old soul on the inside. Can't you tell? Ah, rats. But another Bond movie in the books, Mayday, Grace Jones, so gorgeous. The other one, Stacey Sutton, friggin' Tanya Roberts. It says she's been in Charlie's Angels, Beastmaker, or Beastmaster, and then she was also Sheena in the movie Sheena, and I think it says she was also in That 70s Show. Interesting. Alright. I don't know what she was in those things, but alright, I'm here for it. And this final Bond movie for Roger Moore was directed by John Glenn, who I believe goes on to do the next 2 Bond films with Timothy Dalton as well. And he gets to do 1989's License to Kill and 1987's The Living Daylights. Interesting. So every 2 years, they're still kind of on that Bond momentum, you know. And I think this goes back all the way to like the 60s. They've almost done a Bond film every 2 years, going all the way into the almost 90s now at this point. But yeah. Very interesting. I can't wait to see this next Bond with Timothy Dalton and see how he sizes up. And Timothy Dalton, it looks like he's still alive, still doing his thing. Possibly. He was in Hot Fuzz. He was in Toy Story 3 and 4. Interesting. Very interesting. So yeah, Timothy Dalton's Bonds is up next. I'd love to hear who your favorite Bond is. I think at the current moment, I really do like Roger Moore, and I love Daniel Craig. And obviously Pierce Brosnan's also great, but we've yet to watch his films at this moment. So as far as the people I've seen, I think Sean Connery is still my guy, and I think I just love him as a dude, you know, and just as a character as Bond. But Roger Moore, especially this last one, brings it back. Like, there's no goofy gadgets in this. There's no over-the-top spectacle for the laughs, you know what I mean? Where, like, there's definitely some certain elements of this that are over-the-top. Like, the car stunts are always pretty over-the-top. Some of the explosions or whatnot, you know, some of the things, like the blimp sequence at the end is pretty, you know, out there and outlandish, but also they don't treat it as a joke. So, like, you know, he's taking it serious, so you feel like, oh shit, are they gonna fall off the San Francisco bridge right now? Like, oh fuck, you know, like the same thing, Eiffel Tower, you know, like he's on that. There's this crazy elevator that's on fire, this elevator sequence, he's got to save the girl, you know, like, so this had some great Bond women, great car stunts still, great action, but didn't have the goofy gadgets and you know, didn't take itself too serious, but didn't make a joke of it either. So I think this is in that sweet spot of Bond where, like, yes, the women are gorgeous, but they're not just eye candy. Yes, Bond is handsome, but he's not just handsome. You know, he's actually being a spy in this movie, and it doesn't just end in him defusing another bomb, you know? Like, it's somewhat different. He still has to get the bomb out of there, but he doesn't just go down, defuse it, saves the day, gets the girl, the end, you know? That's happened quite a bit in these Bond films, but at least in, like, Moonraker, you know, they're in space, there's, you know, goofy outfits, you know, there's just goofier stuff happening, and they're really trying to, you know, go sci-fi with it, and, you know, get the gadgets as goofy as possible, you know, like, at a certain point, I think I said this the other day about Bond, and Daniel Craig said this, I believe, as well, and he was like, when they got introduced to, like, the gadgets in James Bond, and then it got spoofed by Austin Powers, and then Austin Powers became so successful and so hilarious that now if you go back to watch James Bond, you know, and I did it myself, you're watching the earliest James Bond movies and the villain with the cat and the gadgets, it all just becomes Austin Powers, and you're laughing at it rather than being like, oh, look at this dangerous villain with the cat, oh, look at this gadget that Bond has to use to save the day. You know, it all became a joke because of how successful Austin Powers became. So this new guy in the new Denis Villeneuve Bond, in Bond 26, I believe is what they're calling it, which is in the writing stage, in the 26th Bond film that they're making, or it might even be 27 at my count. But either way, the newest of the Bond films that's being made still, and maybe Jacob Elordi will become that Bond. I'm thinking for that one, it's going to return to more of like something like this, where it's going to be serious. It's going to be not that many gadgets. It's going to be like, maybe they're talking, bringing it back to like the 50s and 60s, and bringing it back to that early era of like spy, you know, espionage, and like just making it old school, but with today's technology, you know, being able to make the film. So the film will look really good, but it will be set in the past, and I think that's really smart. You know, go back to the past. Why have it set in the present day if it doesn't need to be? You know, like I said, you know, no cell phones in sight, ruining the picture, you know, like Christopher Walken being an absolute ham most of the movie, and just being himself. Absolutely loved this movie, and I think it really could have just been Christopher Walken as the villain and Grace Jones being gorgeous as fuck the whole movie. So, you know, it kept me engaged, it kept me interested. I really did like this, and overall for me, I gave this film about 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I think it's right on the cusp of a 4 out of 5 stars, and it's like a 7.9 out of 10, you know, almost an 8.1, but 7.9, right on the cusp of that border. And yeah, I'm gonna stick with that. 7.9 out of 10. 3.5 out of 5 stars. Really good film. Really enjoyed myself. I'm sad Roger Moore's Bond is over, but also he wasn't my favorite Bond, so on to Timothy Dalton for a couple films, and then we'll be diving into Pierce Brosnan. But we'll see you guys next week for the next James Bond movie review. But please comment below your thoughts about this film down in the comment section below, or if you'd like to send them to me on my other social medias, links for those down in the description below. But if you've made it this far into the video and you'd like to support the channel, the best way to do that is liking this video, commenting down below, hitting the share link button, even just hitting share, copy link, not even sharing it with anybody. Goes a long way helping the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure you hit that bell so you don't miss future James Bond movie reviews and you get the notifications when those come out. And once again, my name's Big Cam, 2 G's in the Big, pretty much anywhere you can find me, just look for this face. And thank you guys once again so much. I'll see you gorgeous folks in the next one. Peace!